When I found out that I was pregnant, I invited Anne to visit Jake and me after I gave birth, because I thought it was a nice gesture for her to spend more time with Jake and her first grandchild since she lives on the other side of the country. She agreed and suggested that I follow the 1-month post-healing plan that is a tradition in Eastern cultures. The whole idea behind this plan is to give the mother who just gave birth a month to heal, rest, eat, and nurse her baby. There are restrictions, for example, having a restricted diet, not going outside, or washing your hair with plain water, but with ginger root water, which I agreed to. She said she would cook the meals for me. Great. So then we arranged for her to visit for 2 weeks, and I assured her I would complete the plan after she left. However, somewhere along the line, she thought it was appropriate for her to extend her stay from 2 to 6 weeks. I was uneasy when Jake told me, but he reassured me that it would be better for her to help me anyway, because I could focus on caring for our newborn. While I was preparing to get discharged from the hospital, I ended up waiting 2 hours for Jake to come back because he had problems installing the car seat, and being the middle of winter, the weather was also an issue. I was extremely agitated at this point because my hormones were a mess. My body was still aching from the delivery, I was hungry and exhausted from sleeping on hospital beds. Then lo and behold, Anne came in the door with Jake. I couldn't keep all my feelings from showing on my face, and I gave Jake a resting face because I really wanted to go home. And by him bringing her, it was another thing I had to deal with. He then had the audacity to tell me to put on a smile. I knew he wanted me to lighten up and meant well, but goddamn, I was livid. We arrived home, and I didn't know I had this in me, but I yelled, "Fine, I'll wear the hat," at Jake and Anne because she was pestering me to wear it because it was apparently one of the rules I had to follow, which was not part of the original plan. I felt embarrassed for losing my cool. Meanwhile, my sister came to visit, and Anne grabbed my sister and started bawling, saying that she doesn't feel welcomed when my frustration was because Jake mishandled the hospital discharge and me feeling terrible after delivery. So then I apologized to her because while I knew she was on the sensitive side, she meant well. However, during this apology, she had the audacity to lecture me that I needed to better regulate my emotions and expressions. What the heck? I just gave birth and was struggling with postpartum. But I kept telling myself, it's okay, it'll be over soon. It wasn't okay, and everything went from bad to being a nightmare. One thing led to another, from 1, informing me of additional rules I had no idea about beforehand, to 2, finding out she cleaned the master bedroom without my consent, to 3, feeding my baby formula at the amount she thought was appropriate because his lips were still moving, even though my goal was to exclusively breastfeed, to 4, saying I could start exercising 2 weeks postpartum, to 5, wanting a newborn baby to sleep on his stomach to pass gas, which is dangerous because it can lead to sudden infant death syndrome, to 6, making me feel terrible for having postpartum depression and crying because staying positive is a choice after giving birth. I felt trapped in my own home because Anne was a control freak who had virtually no empathy and was in my space all the time. And even though I expressed my frustration to Jake, nothing was resolved because Anne felt like, because she came from a place of love, that our boundaries weren't important. And I felt like he didn't have the mental or emotional capacity to be 100% honest with Anne because of the fatigue of working a full-time job, going grocery shopping 3 to 4 times a week, and helping me care for our newborn baby throughout the night. The friction between her and us got worse day by day, with her stay ending with yelling at Jake at the top of her lungs in front of me that he wasn't thoughtful to her, like not asking her what she wanted to eat, even though he would have no problem buying whatever she wanted to eat, and that he was disrespectful because he wasn't always facially expressing gratitude to her, such as smiling. At this point, Jake was deeply embarrassed and upset because imagine being in your 30s and getting humiliated in front of your wife by no fault of your own. Anne then slammed the door and went out for 6 hours that day and the next without telling us where she went in a city she's unfamiliar with, which is completely irresponsible of her because what if something happened to her? Anyway, She also didn't say goodbye to us before leaving with an Uber to the airport. Once Anne arrived back home, I chose to be the bigger person and sent her pictures of her grandchild. She would respond by sending heart emojis. However, she would forward them to Jake and ask questions that I could answer, like what solids we were giving and how much, etc. The last straw was on Mother's Day when she chose to ignore me the entire call, not even a happy Mother's Day to me. So then I delegated sending pictures to Jake because she was being disrespectful. This all happened in January, and we only called or FaceTimed Anne on Mother's Day. All other communication has been through text. Although we know she would appreciate seeing our baby, she's too toxic for us to connect with her in a healthy way. To add, I also speak poorly of her in front of Jake when she's brought up in conversation. I'm not proud of it, but it is how I cope with feeling incredibly disrespected. Jake says he understands, but I know he feels terrible deep down because Anne is still his mother at the end of the day. Now in present day, Jake wants to visit his side of the family later this year, and I'm absolutely dreading it. I don't hate Anne, but I have lost respect for her because of how she's handled this whole situation. But because she has a victimization mindset, she will only continue to display dysfunction, pride, and toxicity towards Jake and me. As a result, I dread having to deal with her when we visit and personally don't want anything to do with her. But Jake has expressed that it's important to him that our baby has a positive relationship with Anne. I told Jake that I would be on board as long as Anne is reasonable. But because both Jake and I are traumatized by Anne, we need advice on how to move forward. Thank you in advance. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You will need to be very firm with your boundaries with Anne. Do not leave the baby alone with Anne. She will do and feed the baby what she wants. Don't worry about hurting her feelings. She will cry to manipulate you. Don't give in. Tell Jake that if you visit and he allows Anne to walk all over you, you will take the baby and stay in a hotel. Better yet, keep yours and the baby's tickets so you can change your flight and head home. These are extreme measures, but warn Jake you expect his total support during this trip. Good luck. Comment 2. Jake has expressed that it's important to him that our baby has a positive relationship with Anne. You become the people you spend the most time with. If you have your baby around Anne, that means your baby will become like Anne. I would be very careful about how much and under what conditions you let the mother-in-law be around your baby. You and your husband need to be on the same team about this, though. It sounds like he isn't willing to put you and his baby above his mother yet. Now for the update. I'm back with more drama, and it feels like a never-ending nightmare. It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and the situation with Anne has only gotten worse. Jake and I thought maybe attending a family barbecue would help, but it just made things way worse. When we got there, Anne started critiquing my parenting choices in front of everyone. Like, really? In front of the whole family? She insisted on holding the baby in a way that I had already told her made me uncomfortable. I mean, give me a break. Her sister even made a snide remark about how I should be grateful for Anne's help. Grateful? For what? Making my life miserable? Jake tried to intervene, but she just brushed him off, saying he was being too soft on me. After dinner, Anne suggested a group photo, but I just wanted to avoid any more scrutiny, so I declined. In the days following the barbecue, I got a group message from Anne's family, sharing the photo and making jokes about my absence. Like, can you believe that? I was livid. Then one evening, Jake and I had a heated discussion about whether to visit Anne again for a family holiday celebration. He was all about family loyalty, but I just couldn't deal with her anymore. I decided to confront Anne directly about her comments during the barbecue, and it led to the most awkward phone call ever. She accused me of being overly sensitive and not appreciating her intentions. What intentions? To make my life a living hell? Things reached a breaking point when Jake invited Anne to our house for a visit without even asking me. Can you believe that? While I was out, I got texts from him insisting I come home and keep the peace for the baby's sake. When I got back, the atmosphere was thick with tension, and Anne made this passive-aggressive remark about my absence. Before I knew it, we were shouting at each other, and Jake was defending his mother instead of me. That triggered a major argument between us. and I was just done. A few days later, I got an invitation from Anne for a family holiday celebration at a local venue. She even followed up with a message questioning why I wouldn't want to celebrate with family. Are you kidding me? I was already dreading it, and I was right to be. The holiday was a disaster from start to finish. Anne was back to her old tricks, critiquing everything I did in front of relatives. I finally snapped and confronted her in front of everyone, declaring my boundaries. It was an embarrassing scene, and everyone just looked on uncomfortably. Afterward, Jake was visibly upset by my outburst. We talked about it, and he expressed his disappointment and confusion over what I had done. I felt bad for ruining the holiday, but I was just done. Our relationship feels strained, and there's this lingering resentment from both of us. I don't know where we go from here. Edit. Jake and I agreed to try couples therapy. It's not easy, but we're working on communication and setting boundaries together. Am I the idiot for cutting off my friend after she lied and blamed another friend for her own mistakes? I got married almost 2 months ago now, and this has really been weighing heavily on my heart. I invited one of my good friends, Tasha, 26 years old, to my wedding and allowed for her to bring a new boyfriend I hadn't met. Since we had a smaller wedding, 65 guests, I noticed that Tasha, her new boyfriend, and my other friend Shauna, 29 years old, weren't present. They arrived 1 hour late, well into cocktail hour, and long after the wedding ceremony. When they showed up, Shauna apologized to me profusely and said her flight was delayed and that she wants me to know that her tardiness in no way means my friendship isn't a priority to her, and that she wished she had left the day before to avoid delays. I accepted her apology and said that these things happen, and I'm just glad she could make it to celebrate with us. Tasha, on the other hand, did not apologize to my husband and me at all. I reached out to her a few days after the wedding, and she immediately began to blame Shauna. We were only late because Shauna's flight was late. I wish I had left her to grab her own Uber. I tried to pick her up multiple times with another Uber, but she was never ready. At first, I took this at face value and thought, all right, things happen. Until I brought this up with Shauna, who then told me the exact play-by-play of what happened. It turns out all of what Tasha said was a complete lie. Tasha and her new boyfriend were not ready when Shauna got to their apartment. Her flight was indeed late, but she still made it in time to their apartment. And if they had all left on time when Shauna arrived, they would have just made it on time, or only a few minutes late. It turns out, Tasha came down in slippers to greet Shauna in the lobby when she arrived, and despite Shauna's best efforts to hurry them along, Tasha and her boyfriend were not ready to go until 4 p.m., the time when our wedding ceremony was to start, and it's a 40-minute drive away. Tasha threw Shauna under the bus, but until I spoke to Shauna, I had no idea that Tasha and her boyfriend spent 30 minutes picking a fancy car to take, rather than feeling like they should get to our wedding on time. I feel completely lied to, and horrible that Tasha threw my friend completely under the bus. I raised the situation with Tasha, to which she said Shauna was still at fault, and Shauna was the only reason she was late. Lying again. I have full trust in Shauna. She has been an amazing friend to me, respectful, caring, and goes out of her way to be present. Tasha, especially as of late, has been entitled, has no respect for other people's time, and is immediately defensive when you try to bring up things that upset you. Tasha has been a friend of my husband and me for years, but I'm not sure I can regain my trust with her after this situation. Am I being too harsh in putting up a boundary with Tasha and pulling back on our friendship? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. No, you are not being too harsh. I would do the same. She sounds like she has always been entitled and a little rude, but her treatment of Shauna, instead of owning her own actions, would be the last straw for me. Comment 2. Let your friendship with Tasha naturally fizzle out. You do not need that type of energy in your life. Now for the update. I got married a week ago, and now my friend is blowing up my phone calling me a bad friend. I invited my sister's friends to a birthday dinner for my sister at a popular Italian restaurant. I invited Tasha and Shauna, hoping to make amends with Tasha over what happened at my wedding. The day before the dinner, Tasha texted me saying she was bringing her boyfriend again. I was hesitant but decided to let it go since it was my sister's day. Everything was going well at the dinner. Everyone was laughing and enjoying the food. I noticed Tasha and her boyfriend were late again. Shauna arrived on time and we exchanged looks of disbelief when Tasha finally showed up. She walked in with a confident smile as if nothing happened. My sister asked her for a toast and she raised her glass without acknowledging the lateness. During dinner, Tasha kept making snide comments about Shauna's outfit, saying it looked like she threw it on last minute. Shauna brushed it off, but I could see her discomfort grow. I finally called Tasha out on her rudeness, reminding her of the earlier incident. She scoffed, saying she was just being real. The atmosphere shifted, and my sister looked confused, not knowing the backstory. I tried to steer the conversation back to lighter topics, but Tasha continued to bring up the past. After dinner, I took Shauna aside to apologize for Tasha's behavior. She said she didn't care about Tasha, but appreciated the support. As we were talking, Tasha overheard and stormed over, accusing me of always taking Shauna's side and making her feel unwelcome. Tasha's boyfriend jumped in, saying I was being dramatic. The dinner ended awkwardly, and Tasha left without saying goodbye. My sister thanked me for inviting her friends, unaware of the tension. I decided to confront Tasha the next day, wanting to clear the air. I texted her asking to meet for coffee, aiming for an honest conversation. She agreed, but showed up late again, saying she got caught up. Tasha deflected, saying I was overreacting and made it seem like I was the problem. I planned a small gathering at my place, inviting Shauna and a few other friends, excluding Tasha. During the gathering, I shared stories about how supportive Shauna had been through everything. Tasha found out about the gathering through social media and confronted me via text. I responded by inviting her to the next event, knowing she wouldn't be welcome. Tasha showed up uninvited, causing a scene, demanding to know why I was excluding her. I calmly told her that her behavior had consequences and that trust was broken. She stormed out, and the friends who witnessed it were shocked. The group rallied around me, confirming they felt the same about Tasha's attitude. The last text I received from Tasha was a rant about how I was losing a true friend. I just replied with a thumbs up emoji. Edit. I realize I didn't mention Tasha's past behavior. She has always been inconsistent with her plans and often expects others to accommodate her. Her friends and I have previously overlooked these traits, hoping she would improve. However, her recent actions, especially at my wedding, were the final straw. Am I the idiot for wanting to leave my boyfriend after his DUI and lies about drinking? I have been with my boyfriend, who is 27 years old, for about 6.5 years now. We met in high school. He is my first love, my first long-term relationship, and the only man I've ever been with sexually. Like all relationships, we have had our ups and downs, but his drinking has always been a point of contention in the relationship. When we were young, I didn't find it as much of an issue until he started drinking our roommates' bottles and then putting them back empty. It really became an issue when we finally moved into our own place 2.5 years ago. He tends to work in construction and gets laid off for the winter season. The first winter we lived here, in 2022, he started sneaking around buying cheap beer and lying to me about it. He would go for walks multiple times a night to drink the beer he had hidden. He would drink when I was out of the home, and the whole time he would lie about it, even when I could clearly tell he was lying but didn't have proof at the time. After about 3 months, it all came to light, and we got into a blow-up argument, mostly on my end. I wanted to end the relationship there, but we decided to work on it. Like all people struggling with addiction, he would do well for a time and then fall back into drinking again. But he would limit himself to only a few at a time, so I overlooked it as it wasn't his usual binge drinking. Last June, he ended up being charged with a driving under the influence. He lied to me at first about what happened, but he eventually did tell me the truth. I made the excuse of him dealing with the death of his dad for why he made a stupid, selfish mistake. After this, he started going to Alcoholics Anonymous for a bit and cut alcohol out completely. However, he got caught driving under a suspended license a few weeks ago and is now back dealing with the courts. I believe the stress of this and his hours at work being cut back led him to make the poor decision to buy a couple of beers last night. When I came home from work, I could almost tell immediately. I don't know how I could tell, but I just could. I asked him if he had been drinking, and he lied and said no. He stupidly forgot to throw away his cans that were sitting on the ground next to the couch. I settled after work and went to sit down. I immediately saw the cans. I started calling him a liar, threw his empty can at him, and dumped the rest of his second one down the drain. After an hour of cooling down, we had a talk, and I told him I couldn't do this anymore. Mostly because I just can't trust him. He wants us to try again to work through this, and I find myself weak to stand my ground. The issue is, we are so financially dependent and tied together. I have no family around I could lean on or stay with. I was in a car accident, and I'm not yet cleared medically to return to full-time work, so I can't afford to move out. I do love him a lot and want to try to work it out. However, it feels like I always give in. Nothing ends up changing for good. I stay unhappy, and the resentment I feel grows more. But I also tell myself that relationships require work, and these are things people work through to become stronger. Is finally calling it the right decision here? Any advice on how to live with an ex? Almost forgot. I do apologize for any confusion or for putting in too much information. My mind is just in a million directions right now. Thank you for any advice. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Even if it's just 2 beers, it shows he's not ready to quit, and nobody is going to quit until they're ready. You are absolutely within your rights to not have the capacity for his drinking problem and want to call it quits. I empathize with how hard it is to quit and stay sober, and it's good to remember that it's a disease that has a hold on him. I am in recovery myself, but you're also so young, and you deserve to experience more than this. I think there are better things waiting for you, for sure. I was with the same guy for 6 years, similarly from high school into my 20s, and I am so glad I didn't marry him and decided not to settle because of our history. It absolutely felt like the end of the world leaving him at the time, but it was so worth it. Comment 2. Look at it this way. What will feel worse to you? 1. Leave him. He doesn't sober up and ruins his life, but not yours. 2. Stay. He doesn't sober up and you're in this same position in a few more years, maybe with a child. There's a third option. You leave, and that will be his wake-up call. But how long are you going to let him drag you down before that could happen? You have dreams and goals, I assume? Interests, hobbies, friendships? Pursue those. Focus on who you are for a while instead of trying to help someone who doesn't want help. Now for the update. It's been just over a month since my last fight with my boyfriend about his drinking and trust issues. He kept going to Alcoholics Anonymous but still had cravings. I started working part-time, which helped with money but made things more stressful. We got invited to a friend's birthday party at a local bowling alley. He promised he wouldn't drink at the party and seemed serious about staying sober. At the party, he looked like he was having fun, laughing and joking with friends. I saw him chatting with a group of people at the bar area. As the night went on, I noticed him stepping away from the group more often. I followed him to the restroom and saw him hiding a beer can in his jacket. We had a fight, which got the attention of a few people at the party. He first denied it, but I saw him clearly. He got defensive, saying he just wanted to have fun for one night. The fight got worse, and he stormed out of the bowling alley. The next day, I got a text from him apologizing and saying he needed space. We agreed to meet up later that week to talk things over. During the meeting, he said he had been feeling a lot of pressure and couldn't handle it. The talk turned into blaming each other, with both of us mentioning our frustrations. We decided to take a break from social events to focus on ourselves. A few days later, he asked if I would join him for a family dinner at his parents' house. At the dinner, his family seemed unaware of the tension between us. Mid-dinner, his younger sister shared a story about a friend's recent engagement. His reaction seemed dismissive, and he quickly changed the topic. After dinner, we stepped outside for fresh air, but had another heated discussion. I confronted him about his attitude during dinner, leading to another fight. He accused me of being unsupportive and not understanding his struggles. The fight ended with him leaving abruptly, saying he needed time alone. Days passed without much communication, except for brief texts about logistics. I found out he was hanging out with some old friends who had questionable habits. One evening, I discovered he had returned to drinking and was partying. I got a call from one of his friends, asking if I had seen him recently. Worried, I reached out to him, but he didn't respond. A week later, he came home late one night, smelling of alcohol. We had another fight, but this time it felt different, more serious. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.